The cockpit falls silent. The captain's hand slips from the throttle as his body slumps forward, the warning alarms echoing through the aircraft. Passengers gasp, flight attendants rush to the door, and panic threatens to spread. At 35,000 feet, with hundreds of lives hanging in the balance, one figure rises quietly from their seat. They've never worn a uniform, they've never been on this side of the controls, but the fate of everyone on board now depends on the silent passenger who dares to step into the cockpit. The hum of the engines was steady, a low vibration that seemed almost reassuring as Flight 728 cut through the night sky. Passengers had settled into their routines, some with headphones on, others flipping through glossy magazines or dozing lightly against the window panes. The flight attendants were preparing the next service, moving gracefully down the aisle with carts of drinks and snacks. Inside the cockpit, everything appeared normal. The captain, a seasoned aviator with thousands of hours in the air, adjusted the throttles and shared a few words with his first officer. But then, suddenly, with no warning, the tone of the flight shifted. The captain's hand trembled. His voice faltered mid-sentence. And before his co-pilot could react, his body slumped forward against the controls. The cockpit filled with a shrill alarm as warning lights flashed red across the instrument panel. The co-pilot jolted upright. "Captain! Captain!" His voice was sharp with panic, but there was no response. The captain's breathing was ragged, his face pale. It was a medical emergency at 35,000 feet. Meanwhile, in the cabin, no one yet knew what was happening up front. But within minutes, the atmosphere changed. A flight attendant rushed toward the cockpit, her face pale as she quietly told her colleagues, "The captain's down." The word sent a ripple of unease through the crew. They knew the co-pilot was capable, but the enormity of flying a commercial aircraft alone, on a long-haul flight with potential turbulence ahead, was terrifying. The co-pilot immediately called for medical assistance. "Ladies and gentlemen, if there is a doctor on board, please make yourself known." The announcement echoed through the cabin, a chilling reminder that something was very wrong. Several passengers looked up nervously, some unbuckled their belts to see if they could help. A doctor stepped forward to assist the captain, but it was clear, the man who had carried the responsibility of this flight was out of commission. And now the entire weight of the journey rested on one person, the co-pilot. But the storm outside the windows told another story. Reports of turbulence were already coming in. Flying and landing a jet alone was possible, but incredibly risky. The flight attendants whispered nervously to each other. What if the co-pilot couldn't handle it? What if fatigue or stress set in? The safety of over 200 souls depended on every single decision made in that cockpit. In row 14, a quiet passenger had been watching closely. They had said nothing throughout the flight, their demeanor calm, almost detached from the growing panic around them. But when they saw the commotion up front, the frantic calls, the trembling voices of the attendants, they knew something. This was their moment. The passenger took a deep breath, unbuckled their seatbelt, and stood up. Every eye in the nearby rows followed them as they walked slowly toward the cockpit. They didn't look like a hero. No uniform, no badge, nothing to suggest authority. Just an ordinary traveler. But soon, they would reveal the secret that made them anything but ordinary. The cockpit door stood open, guarded by a flight attendant whose eyes darted nervously between the slumped captain, the pale-faced co-pilot, and the passengers who had gathered nearby, whispering in confusion. The aircraft felt heavier somehow, as if everyone on board suddenly realized the gravity of the situation. And then, from the aisle, a calm voice broke through the tension. "I can help." Heads turned. The man, or rather, the quiet figure from row 14, wasn't dressed like a pilot. No uniform, no polished shoes. Just a plain shirt, travel-worn jacket, and eyes that carried a kind of steady determination. The co-pilot looked up, skeptical. "Sir, this is a secure area." "Please." "I know," the passenger interrupted gently, raising his hands to show he wasn't a threat. "But listen to me. I've trained in simulators. I'm not a commercial pilot, but I know how these controls work." The words hung in the air like smoke. Passengers behind him gasped. A murmur swept through the cabin. Could this be true? Was this stranger really suggesting he could fly the plane? The co-pilot hesitated, torn between protocol and desperation. He had spent his career preparing for emergencies, but this wasn't in the manual. He was alone up here, expected to manage radio calls, navigation, and flight controls all at once. One mistake at this altitude could spell disaster. Finally, he exhaled and nodded toward the spare seat. Sit. Fasten in. Don't touch anything until I tell you. The passenger slid into the cockpit, heart hammering but hands steady. The panel in front of him glowed with a constellation of switches and dials, each one humming with significance. To the untrained eye, it was overwhelming. But to him, it was familiar, like stepping into a memory he had long kept hidden. Air traffic control crackled through the radio. Flight 728, do you copy? We've received word of a medical emergency on board. The co-pilot grabbed the transmitter. Confirmed. Captain incapacitated. I'm flying solo. His voice was taut with strain. The passenger leaned closer. Tell them there's another set of hands available. Tell them I've trained. The co-pilot shot him a sharp glance but, under pressure, relayed the message. A pause followed, then the cool, professional voice from the ground. Understood. Advise name and experience of assisting passenger. The words felt unreal. Official recognition that this quiet stranger was now part of the cockpit crew. The passenger spoke clearly. Private aviation experience. Hundreds of simulator hours. No commercial license. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. The voice on the other end adjusted immediately, shifting into calm instruction mode. Copy that. Maintain current heading. We'll vector you toward the nearest airport capable of handling your aircraft. Stand by for instructions. Back in the cabin, word spread quickly. There's a passenger helping fly the plane, someone whispered, and panic rippled into cautious hope. Strangers clasped hands, some prayed, others simply stared ahead, wide-eyed. For the passenger now strapped into the cockpit, there was no room for fear. He placed his hands on the controls, feeling the aircraft respond beneath his fingertips. This wasn't a simulator. This was real. Hundreds of lives. A storm ahead. A fragile co-pilot beside him. And a single truth pounding in his mind. If he failed, no one survived. The storm was waiting. Clouds loomed ahead, flashing with the distant pulse of lightning, while turbulence rattled the cabin and sent shivers of fear through every seat. The co-pilot's voice was steady but strained as he called out. Autopilot disengaged. Your hands are on the controls. Don't fight the plane, guide it. The silent passenger gripped the yoke, his palms damp but steady. Every bump felt like the aircraft wanted to shake him loose, but he forced his breathing into rhythm. He remembered the simulators, the endless drills of takeoffs, landings, crosswinds. None of it had stakes like this, but muscle memory whispered instructions in the back of his mind. Air traffic control fed them updates, headings, altitudes, runway assignments. Flight 728, you are cleared for emergency landing at Portfield International. Runway 27 is ready for you. Emergency crews are standing by. Down below, flashing lights gathered near the runway. Fire engines, ambulances, personnel bracing for the worst. The co-pilot turned to him. We've got one shot. Keep her nose steady on approach. I'll handle the flaps and gear, just fly. In the cabin, passengers clutched each other's hands as the plane tilted into descent. Some prayed aloud, others closed their eyes. The flight attendants, though terrified, kept their voices calm as they instructed everyone to brace. The passenger's heartbeat roared in his ears as the runway lights appeared through the storm, two glowing lines guiding them home. But the winds were vicious, tossing the jet like a toy. Sweat trickled down his temple. His knuckles whitened as he fought to keep the wings level. Steady, steady, the co-pilot urged. The ground rushed up at them. The engines howled. Alarms blared. For a split second, it felt like they would miss entirely, veer off, collapse, break apart in fire and metal. And then, impact. The wheels screamed against the runway, jolting the entire aircraft. The jet lurched, bouncing once, twice, before the tires bit into the asphalt. The passenger pulled the yoke gently, holding the nose straight as the co-pilot deployed the spoilers and thrust reversers. The roar filled the cabin. The world outside blurred past. Finally, mercifully, the plane slowed. The nose dipped forward. And silence fell. Inside, disbelief turned into cheers. Applause erupted, tears streaming down faces as passengers realized what had just happened. Against every odd, against every fear, they were alive. The co-pilot exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. He turned to the passenger, a faint, exhausted smile breaking through. "You just landed a commercial airliner." The passenger sat back, trembling now that it was over, his composure cracking under the weight of adrenaline. For the first time since stepping into the cockpit, he allowed himself to feel human again. On the ground, emergency crews rushed to the aircraft. The captain was quickly transported to medical care. The co-pilot received praise for his calm leadership. And the once anonymous traveler, the silent passenger, was met with awe. He hadn't sought recognition, but that night, he became a name whispered in headlines and news broadcasts around the world. A man who boarded as nobody, and walked away as the passenger who saved a flight.